while the Trump administration wages war of choice, burning through billions of dollars every single day, and now is asking Congress for more billions. Let's be honest with the American people. When it comes to war, there's always money. There's always money for weapons. There's always money for military contractors. But when children need food, when families need health care, or when a veteran comes home needing support suddenly, we are told there is not enough.
If you're not happy living in America, leave. It's a free country, and I agree with that assessment.
Let me tell you something. There are moments in Congress so raw and unfiltered that even the people sitting in the room can't quite believe what they just witnessed. This was one of those moments. Senator John Kennedy looked directly at Representative Ilhan Omar and said what many Americans say they've been thinking for years. And the reaction in the room said everything. Stay with me, because this is the kind of clip people are already arguing about, and some say it's the moment the media doesn't want spreading everywhere. If you want the full context and the full story, make sure you're paying attention to everything that happened next. Now, before we dive into the moment itself, it helps to understand who Ilhan Omar is in the political landscape. She's a refugee who came to the United States as a child and eventually rose to become a member of Congress, something that many people point to as a uniquely American story. But at the same time, she has also been one of the most controversial voices on Capitol Hill. Over the years, Omar has made sharp criticisms of American foreign policy and the role the United States plays around the world. Some supporters say she is simply speaking hard truths about global politics. Critics, however, argue that her remarks often portray America as a destructive force internationally, and that tension has followed her throughout her time in Congress. According to critics, there have been moments where they believe she has sided with international perspectives over U.S. policy priorities. Her supporters counter that questioning policy is part of the democratic process, but on this particular day, Senator John Kennedy made it clear he had reached a breaking point. What happened next quickly turned a routine exchange into one of those moments people in Washington keep talking about long after the cameras stop rolling.
Clearly showed, categorically, unequivocally, that Iran had restarted its nuclear warhead program. And let me say, I love the people of Iran too. I mean that. I don't think much of their political leadership. The good people of Iran basically are being governed before and now with the new supreme leader by Jack Nicholson and The Shining. They are stone cold crazy. Their religion teaches them, their interpretation of their religion tells them that they have to kill people who don't interpret their religion the same way that they do. And when your religion tells you to kill somebody, as far as I'm concerned, it's time to get a new religion. But be that as it may, our intelligence clearly showed that Iran had restarted its nuclear weapons program, and its plan was to produce so many missiles, so many ballistic missiles, and to some extent cruise missiles and drones. In fact, they were producing between 200 and 600 ballistic missiles a month. Our intelligence showed that their plan was to stockpile so many missiles and so many drones that if we re-entered, or anyone re-entered Iran to stop their new efforts to obtain a nuclear warhead, that they would annihilate the entire Middle East. The entire Middle East. And other countries they could reach, like Turkey. That is a fact. That's what the intelligence showed. So the president, wanting to avoid a future war, said, I've got to intervene now. And here is our mission. I don't care what you've heard. This is what our mission is in Iran. We want to destroy their Navy. We want to destroy Iran's Air Force. We want to destroy Iran's missile production facilities. We want to destroy Iran's drone production facilities. We want to destroy or make them use as many of their missiles as they have and their drones. and we want to attack and destroy the infrastructure used by the Revolutionary Guard. And then we want to get out. Now, there's been a lot of speculation by some of my Democratic friends that, well, the president's going to put boots on the ground. I don't believe that. I don't believe that. If the president puts boots on the ground, the thud you hear will be me face planting from surprise. I will faint. How long will this take? I think a few more weeks, and then we will be out. Was our intelligence right? You better believe it was. What's the first thing, the very first thing that the Iranian leadership did? They started attacking all the other countries in the Middle East. They even fired a missile at Turkey. They even fired a missile at the United Kingdom.
Because here's what critics of the left argue you won't hear discussed enough: you don't get to stand in the halls of the United States Congress, draw a taxpayer-funded salary, benefit from American security, and then spend your entire political career describing the country that elected you as fundamentally evil or beyond repair. To them, that isn't courage. That isn't speaking truth to power. That's a deep contradiction, benefiting from a system while publicly condemning its very legitimacy. And in that moment, Senator John Kennedy didn't ease up. He didn't soften his language or step around the issue. According to supporters, he said directly what he believed needed to be said, face to face, in a setting where most politicians tend to be cautious, measured, and carefully scripted. And the reaction that followed, especially the lack of immediate response in the room, as his supporters describe it, became part of why the moment spread so quickly online. But the argument around this goes far beyond one exchange. Critics often point to Representative Ilhan Omar as part of a broader progressive wing in Congress that strongly criticizes U.S. foreign policy and global influence. Her supporters say that this kind of criticism is a legitimate and necessary part of democratic debate, especially when it comes to accountability in government decisions overseas. Her detractors, however, argue that this style of politics too often crosses into portraying America itself as inherently harmful, rather than focusing on specific policies. And that disagreement has defined much of the political tension around her career. From that perspective, what made Kennedy's remarks stand out wasn't just the content, it was the willingness to say it openly, without the usual political filtering, in a place where most exchanges stay carefully controlled. To his supporters, it was a reminder that elected officials should be held accountable for how they frame the country they represent. Not just policy disagreements, but the broader message they send about national identity and purpose. To others, it was just another flashpoint in an increasingly polarized Congress, where every exchange is interpreted through a partisan lens and amplified far beyond the room where it happened. Either way, it's the kind of moment that doesn't fade quickly, because it taps into a much larger argument about patriotism, criticism, and what it actually means to represent a country in today's Washington.